One word in the wood. It is August 1590, 3 years after a colony was established here. A rowing boat struggles through the surf off the coast of present-day North Carolina. Men jump ashore, run across the wet sand, and call names into the silence. But nobody answers. Where an entire settlement should stand, there is only an empty palisade. No fire, no livestock, no people. And carved into a post, a single word: CROATOAN. No cry for help, no blood, no bodies. Just this one word, and a question that for more than 400 years nobody has been able to answer with certainty. What was Roanoke really? Roanoke was England's first serious attempt to establish a foothold in the New World. More than 100 men, women, and children dared to cross the Atlantic, and vanished without a trace. To this day, their fate remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in American history. This documentary tells the story of the 3 years in between, from the colony's founding in 1587 to White's return in 1590, about the people, their hopes, and the time in which a young colony became a silent ghost settlement. At the end of the 16th century, Queen Elizabeth I rules a country determined to catch up with Spain. Spain's American colonies and the flow of precious metals from the New World strengthen its economic and geopolitical power. England has one thing above all: ambition, and a man named Walter Raleigh. In 1584, Elizabeth I grants Raleigh a patent to explore and colonize territories not already claimed by Christian powers. In 1584, Raleigh sends out a first exploratory voyage, which returns with enthusiastic reports of a fertile coastline. In 1585 comes the first real attempt, a colony populated mainly by soldiers. But shortages of supplies, escalating conflicts with neighboring Algonquian groups, and finally a hurricane cause the colony to fail. The men give up and return home. But this is not only about settlement and trade. For the Crown, a base on this coast is above all a military advantage, a hidden refuge from which English privateers could attack Spanish silver fleets on their journey home. Roanoke was also intended to serve as a strategic base against Spanish shipping. That is precisely what makes the venture so delicate and so dangerous. The second attempt is meant to be different. This time, there will be no predominantly military garrison. Among the settlers are women, children, entire families, craftsmen, and farmers searching for a future. At their head is John White, governor, artist, and cartographer. White already knows the region from earlier voyages. His watercolors of the land and its people rank among the most striking images of the early New World. Here, he leads an entire English colonization project, with his own pregnant daughter also aboard. Arrival at the wrong place. In July 1587, the group reaches the coast. The voyage is actually supposed to continue farther north to Chesapeake Bay, where the land appears safer. But the captain refuses to take the settlers any farther and leaves them on Roanoke Island, exactly where the first colony had already failed. From the beginning, tension hangs in the air. Old conflicts with neighboring indigenous groups flare up again. Shortly after landing, a settler is killed while catching crabs alone. The newcomers suddenly understand. This place does not forgive mistakes. Not all indigenous people are enemies. A man named Manteo, who had even visited England on earlier voyages, supports the English and comes from neighboring CROATOAN. But when the settlers launch a retaliatory attack against a hostile tribe, they strike the wrong people in the darkness, indigenous allies of all people. Trust is damaged almost as soon as the colony has been established. In the middle of this uncertainty, something hopeful happens. White's daughter Eleanor gives birth to a girl, Virginia Dare, the first known child of English parents born in North America. For a moment, The colony feels like a genuine new beginning. But supplies are dwindling, winter is approaching, and relations with neighboring tribes remain tense. The settlers make a difficult decision. Someone must return to England to obtain supplies. And that person, of all people, is to be the governor. White's impossible choice. White does not want to leave. His daughter, his granddaughter only days old, the people he has brought here, all of them are to remain behind. But the settlers insist. As governor and direct representative of the colony, White is to personally request supplies and support in England. Before leaving, they make a clear agreement. If the colonists should leave the settlement, they would carve their destination into wood. If they were forced to leave violently, they should additionally carve a cross. Nobody suspects that the journey will turn into 3 years. White reaches England and walks straight into a catastrophe. The war with Spain is approaching its climax. In 1588, the mighty Spanish Armada sails against England and ties up almost every available ship. Nevertheless, a small supply mission sets out in 1588, only to fail after fighting at sea. White is trapped at home while his family waits for rescue on the other side of the ocean. Planned weeks become months, months become a year, then 2, then 3 agonizing years. In August 1590, 3 years after his departure, does White finally manage to cross the Atlantic. Filled with fear and hope, he approaches Roanoke, but what he finds is eerie. The settlement is abandoned. No people, no bodies, no signs of a struggle. The houses have not been burned down, but carefully dismantled. Around the site, the colonists have built a massive palisade, almost like a small fortress. Everything appears planned and deliberate, not like a panicked escape, but like a departure toward a specific destination. The CROATOAN mystery. Then White discovers the sign. Carved into a post of the palisade is one word, CROATOAN. On a nearby tree are 3 letters, CRO, and the crucial thing is missing. There is no cross. According to their agreement, that means no emergency, no violence. The settlers have apparently deliberately moved to CROATOAN, an island farther south, present-day Hatteras. The CROATOAN lived there, with whom the English maintained comparatively close relations, particularly through Manteo. For a moment, hope rises in White. Perhaps they have simply moved. Perhaps they are waiting for him there. But White never reaches CROATOAN. A severe storm approaches. The sea becomes deadly. Anchor cables snap. Provisions are swept overboard. The crew refuses to sail farther south. Against his desperate wishes, White is forced to return to England, only a few miles from the people he loved. He will never see them again. No later expedition ever finds a definite trace. The young settlement becomes the lost colony, the colony that vanished. A mystery that remains. What happened to the settlers is still unknown with certainty today. Some believe they joined the indigenous people of CROATOAN and quietly continued living among them. Others suspect they tried after all to reach Chesapeake Bay and died along the way, from hunger, storms, or violence. Later, different reports circulate in Jamestown about possible survivors. John Smith and others try to investigate such clues without finding definitive proof. Clear evidence of the colonists' ultimate fate remains missing to this day. Excavations repeatedly produce clues, but never certainty. And so, in the end, only the image of that August morning in 1590 remains. A father arriving 3 years too late, an empty settlement in the pale light, and a single word carved into wood that raises more questions than it will ever answer: CROATOAN.